As if they don't have too much on their plates. The Kings of Combat Sports Podcast.
Neal.
They talk about the things they did that day. They'll analyze the work of Triple H. Rewind-A-SmackDown. 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 Rewind-A-SmackDown.
And hello to all of our free members listening to us over on our YouTube, over on our podcast feeds. Hello and welcome to tonight's edition of Rewind-A-SmackDown, where Neal, Flanagan, and I have just warmed up with about 30 minutes of discussion in the XL edition, talking about various issues, including the latest on the, alleged stabbing event, stabbing at a independent wrestling event involving Krule. A lot of that has resulted now in some repercussions for the venue where the event where that alleged incident took place, and a lot of people are not happy about it. We talked a lot about Alberto El Patron and a lot about the latest on TNA talents being pulled from independent wrestling dates. So go over to the postwrestlingcafe.com, sign up right now, and you can get the full edition of the show, which includes feedback, where later on we will be talking and taking your feedback on tonight's edition of SmackDown.
And it's beginning to roll in already, a
lot of people with a lot of thoughts. Honestly, the feedback over the past, certainly last week, was quite spirited. And I have to think tonight's edition with tonight's follow-up to last week's segment will maybe inspire that as well. But a little bit of housekeeping here. We are on the cusp of WrestleMania week, and it really starts this Sunday with Dynasty, because that show will bleed well into Monday. And starting on Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, John Pollock and myself will be live every single day in the afternoon, usually at about 1 p.m. Eastern Time, delivering bonus shows covering really a lot to do about WrestleMania and WrestleMania week. We'll be having interviews, we'll be doing watch-alongs, we'll be doing a whole lot of interesting discussion for you guys, as just, to help us get into the spirit and to help cover every facet of independent pro wrestling taking place during WrestleMania week, maybe classic WrestleMania memories that we will probably discuss with some of our friends on the network. So it is playoff season for us, and this is the biggest week of the year for us. So we hope you guys join us. postwrestlingcafe.com, where again, this month, we are delivering a 50% off sale for all of our new subscribers. So if you have not given us a chance yet, this is really the best time to do it. You sign up for as little as $4 a month, and you get access to basically everything that we are going to be delivering next week, in addition to our entire archive of shows, which right now includes the latest edition of Daredevil Born Again, Season 2, Episode 4, which is a big one that Rich and WH were talking about. It includes our TNA Rebellion review that John Pollock will be delivering on Saturday, and also Collision Course, which will be up just hours before AEW Dynasty takes place. That will be hosted by Jay Lacey and Kate from Montreal Saturday evening. So
and if you love John Away Together, which I know we all do, including myself, yesterday 2 hours of you guys asking any and all questions with the Ask Away mailbag, one of my favorite shows, because you guys just cut loose, get honest.
Cut loose and get honest. Great. Yeah, exactly what we do. Cut loose, get honest, and answer your questions in 2 hours of it in the Ask Away mailbag yesterday. So thank you, Neal, for that. Go and check that out. Tonight's edition of SmackDown comes to us from San Jose, the Bay Area. I don't know if you realized, Neal, there are a lot of wrestlers on this roster from this particular area.
So it seems, yeah, the Bay Area got a lot of love and a lot of shout-outs tonight on the show.
Certainly. So we're from San Jose, and of course, everybody wants to know what is on Pat McAfee's mind. Really, what is on the WWE's mind, and their reaction to the incredibly loud response from the audience to the Pat McAfee angle last week. But they tease us, of course, first, because we see... I want to even talk about the video recap, because again, the video recaps are often very sort of revealing in what they actually want us to take away from these segments. And in this video recap, they included some things, omitted others. They omitted Pat talking about tickets being weak, or at least tickets still being on sale. They omitted the line about, the lowest rating, which is no longer the lowest rating because last week certainly overtook it. They did keep Cody Rhodes making allusions to Pat's representatives, which, coupled with everything else that we're about to talk about, continues to suggest the idea that they are pushing some sort of upper management puppet mastery of all of this, with Pat just kind of merely being a pawn. So we start things off with Cody seeing Nick Aldis in the back. Aldis has to tell Cody not to put his hands on Pat under any circumstances, and he says this is under strict orders from people above him. So again, making those allusions. Jelly Roll then shows up. Aldis tells him not to engage with Orton after what Orton did to him a couple weeks back. Jelly then gives Cody one of his famous pep talks. Says this has nothing to do with Pat McAfee. Tells him this should just be about Randy and Cody Rhodes and their 20-year history. Tells him not to be distracted. Says he's fighting for something bigger this time. It's not just his story. So
I love these motivational speeches from Jelly Roll, who just follows WWE around the country. It feels like, I mean, why is he even here? to talk to Cody, I guess, and say, yeah. And then at the end of all that, just gives him a nice little pat, says, chew on that, champ.
So I'd certainly, number one, I think Jelly Roll is really good at these. And
He is.
I think it's why they continue to script him in these segments. Number one, he's famous, okay, Neal? And if you're famous, then you can have as much airtime as you want. But secondly, I actually think he's a very strong performer in these sort of segments. He's able to emote really well. He's able to just kind of get you pumped up, like in the way that he speaks. But here, it seems to, like, the subtext of all of this is that it's somehow the writers rebelling against the direction that they are being given by TKO to insert this Pat McAfee storyline into their stories. Because here you had Jelly Roll basically say, this has nothing to do with Pat McAfee. This should be about Randy and Cody and their 20-year history. Don't get distracted. And when he says, you're fighting for something bigger this time, it's not just your story. Well, what does that mean? I mean, to me, it means that Cody is not just fighting Randy Orton. He's not even fighting Pat McAfee. He's fighting against TKO and Ari Emanuel and their continued influence into these storylines. Am I wrong for thinking that?
That's the implication. That's what I take away from it. And as we'll get to later on in the show, it's all far, far too in the weeds, I think, for the average fan. I think, and even for those of us who are steeped in all of this and like watch Pollock and Thurston each week and know all of the business side of things, know who Ari Emanuel is, know who Mark Shapiro is, and all of those things. I think the average fan is probably just wildly confused by all of this, wondering who the higher power in all of this is.
Well, what is the average fan these days, Neal? Because, like, judging by like this sort of writing, they're assuming their average fan knows. Maybe they're not, but like they're assuming a big chunk of their audience knows exactly what Cody is referencing when he says your representatives.
I think that's right, but the fans in attendance don't seem to have the reaction to that. And they don't really mention TKO very much. Pat did tonight, but they were kind of like shrouded in mist. Yeah. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be landing very well, I feel, with the crowds in the arenas, at least. So maybe the very online fans, yeah. So they don't like it either, though. You only have to look at X tonight, and it's
the thing's a fucking mess right now. Okay,
yeah, it's complete mess.
We're in the space now where we kind of have to like they're playing some sort of like game where they're trying to overcome it with more writing. They're trying to fix things while at the same time continuing the wishes of, I guess, Ari Emanuel in making Pat McAfee a character in the show, while at the same time other characters are actively fighting against that direction. So me even having to explain that sounds ridiculous. It's like it's a ridiculous idea for professional wrestling. All I can really say is that maybe they have some inspiration from WrestleMania 40 and what they kind of landed in with Dwayne Johnson. Yep. Very similarly, inserting his maybe desires, interrupting the plans for WrestleMania, interrupting Cody's story at that point, wanting to insert his main event against Roman Reigns in there before the audience came in and basically demanded the other thing. That was somehow effective because enough people knew what the story was. Are they simply wanting to replicate that, but with Ari Emanuel in place of The Rock?
I think the issue is, though, we're a week from tomorrow is a week from WrestleMania, and they they don't have time to pivot with the story really anywhere from where they're already going. And in fact, one of the stories we didn't cover in the XL portion at the beginning, because I knew that we would be talking about it during this show, is that there's wide reporting about a match booked for Backlash, which I think we'll just get to later rather than talk about at the moment, which makes it seem like this is going to continue, this integration of McAfee.
Yes.
And
So
Jelly
more on this incredible storyline that is unfolding before our eyes. Just really 2 weeks ahead of WrestleMania here. We go to Rhea Ripley, who is still really mad about Jade's attack on Io Sky on Monday, and says that Jade found her one weakness, her Io. So out comes her Io. She's got her ribs taped and a taped arm from the kendo stick attack on Monday. Io says she knows Rhea has Jade at WrestleMania, but she wants a face to hurt tonight. So Aldis comes out and he's like, "You're not even on SmackDown. You didn't sign a contract with us. We can't do this." No, he does not say that. He says, "Sure, why not? You're in the main event tonight." And he makes Io Sky versus Jade Cargill for tonight. Then we get Bayley versus Alexa Bliss. Speaking of Raw, Raw's Bayley is in her hometown, so of course she gets a pass. She gets a match on SmackDown tonight. Gets a great reaction. Bayley injures her knee early on. After a commercial break, Charlotte, because they are certainly more of the heels in this match, Charlotte offers a little bit of a brief distraction on the outside, allowing Alexa to take control. Bliss goes for this very interesting version of a tornado DDT. It looks like she's going for a DDT, but Bayley takes the bump like a suplex. So Bayley ends up taking a really high angle, fall on her head. So it did end up looking, to me, it did look intentional, and therefore maybe a bit more like Finn Balor's Bloody Sunday than maybe a typical tornado DDT. Nonetheless, Barrett gave a crazy reaction for it, suggesting he wasn't really sure what they were going for. Any thoughts?
I felt it looked intentional as well. Way that was my reaction, that this was a bit like Finn's move, and Bayley did not seem hurt. Even in the slow-mo, she looked like she bridged very nicely into this, so I don't think it was a botch of any kind.
So they go for a series of near pinfalls. Bayley then executes a top rope elbow for a 2. On the outside, Bayley starts mocking Charlotte by chopping and doing the strutting. So they do kind of draw those connections, but with the two of them being two of the 4 horsewomen, of course. Yeah. Bayley is, of course, distracted by her own yelling at Charlotte, and this allows Alexa to roll her up through the ropes for the victory. So I don't exactly know what Bayley's sort of record in her hometown is, but I have to imagine it's under 500. So Bayley beats one of the champions on Monday, but loses on Friday. So I get the sense they're doing some level of rock paper scissors booking with the teams here. Yeah,
I thought this was a solid match, mind you. I mean, I get two wrestlers who know each other pretty well, right back to NXT, and I would say my issue with all of this is all of the players in this women's tag team title match next week have been a little bit overexposed for my liking in ring. If they'd done a bit more to sort of set up storyline angles, rather than them just sort of beating each other up at the end of every match, I think I would have preferred that. But we've just seen so many combinations of them in singles matches now and tag matches against one another that it's become a bit tiresome. And to me, that doesn't leave me amped to see all 4 teams, assuming assuming Nikki is fine, next week.
They have been very reliant on this particular match to fill out airtime, on their show. So I don't disagree with that. And
it's been on Raw as well as SmackDown. That's the other thing that's got a bit sort of tiresome, I think.
No update on the Bellas, and maybe to the idea that they are awaiting the announcement of Io Sky and Asuka for to see whether or not the Bellas are healthy. They have not announced that match yet as of this show. So we continue to await the status of Nikki Bella's ankle. In the back, Matt Cardona is consoling Carmelo Hayes about having to wait for his WrestleMania moment, and there's the suggestion that I guess Hayes has a knee injury coming off of the match last week. So here come Trick and Yachty. Yachty is wearing a gingerbread man shirt. Trick says, "I thought you were going to win last week, Carmelo." Mello blames Trick partially for his loss of the championship in the first place and tells him to get lost. Yachty taunts him. Mello says he hopes Trick wins because he's going after him for that championship after WrestleMania. Trick then tries to defuse the situation between Mello and Yachty. Cardona also says he has problems with guests like Yachty acting like they run the place. And so we get later Trick Williams versus Matt Cardona tonight. So from the segment like this, like we learn a little bit more about like the Yachty Trick dynamic, and I sense that they are having Yachty really play like more of the villain here, more of the obnoxious, annoying heel that would sort of fulfill that role that Trick would if he was not a tweener on his essentially like a babyface to much of the audience already. Trick here instead is almost diffusing the situation, trying to calm Yachty down while, you know, I guess setting up a match with Matt Cardona.
That feels like the dynamic to me as well. Trick is so popular with the audience. He's such a charisma machine that they love him. And Yachty's sort of there as the heat magnet. And in the match later, we see that as well. And I think, I have to say, he's doing it really, really well. And the ginger, this is Gingy from Shrek. He's got on his shirt.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Neal. Never seen it.
He's amusing. I think the two of them are great together.
Interesting. Yeah, to me, I thought there was a bit much Yachty like by the end of this show, but yes, in spurts, I too have enjoy him, I could say. So we see a promo from Drew McIntyre, and he is coming to us, as I think we expected, from a prison cell. He cuts an entire promo on Jacob Fatu here, and he says, "This cell represents who you are and who you will always be, a convict. You chose a life of crime instead of providing for your children. All you do is steal. You don't belong in the WWE. You belong in a cage like an animal. And at Mania, I'm going to be your judge, jury, and executioner."
Yeah. Your kids needed a father and you gave them a walking mugshot. There's some good lines in here.
Mm-hmm.
I was amused, though, by the prison that he was in. This is like a 1960s Supermax prison or something. He must have
been in Alcatraz. He must have visited Alcatraz.
It looks like Alcatraz, which I have actually visited.
Me too.
And I think the cells are even smaller in Alcatraz, and they're more opened with bars. You can see into them, but all the same, this. I mean, the thing that made me laugh is that Jacob spent a bit of time in county jail, and in fairness, for armed robbery. I'm not saying it was for like a petty crime or anything like that, but I don't think he would have been in this prison with 50-foot walls and searchlights and all, you know, this super security and all of that. So that kind of gave me a bit of a giggle. But all the same, this is in pro wrestling. This was perfect. Yeah.
We don't know it was armed robbery. He could have had just a crazy heist.
Could be.
Yeah. I liked some of the lines here, and like, you know, in a 60-second promo, you're not going to achieve that much. But I will still say, I don't think this feud has achieved like peak Drew McIntyre yet. It doesn't feel that personal. Like, he's got sort of one angle, and that's to just continue to say, you're a criminal, you jail. I thought like the most interest he got was accusing Jacob of being a bad father because he chose a life of crime instead of his children. I kind of wanted to see a bit more of that. I actually wanted to see more involvement with the kids, but I understand why somebody would not want to involve their children in this crazy world. So a bit more on Jacob Fatu, who does react in the back, and he's about to cut a promo in retaliation to Drew when the MFTs enter. Solo says that he too has family in the Bay Area, but he says whenever somebody like Drew talks about Jacob's past, it brings embarrassment to his family. Jacob offers to run it back with Solo tonight. Solo says he wasn't here. Says, wasn't it here where he got his teeth knocked out? And asks if we actually know who did it, which we still do not, at least not definitively. He threatens to have it happen again and volunteers Tama to face Jacob tonight. So Tama is somewhat reluctant in accepting it, but does stand up to fight Jacob. So they are bringing up that very loose end of who attacked Jacob Fatu, which I had forgotten was even a mystery that we yet to really solve. I suppose we had just assumed it was Drew, but that was never confirmed. And Solo kind of bringing up in this fashion tonight seems to confirm that it's not not Drew. Right?
And anytime it did come up, Drew called him a liar and denied it. And one of the things about Drew as a heel is that he's sort of truthful in his own mind, and everyone else is misunderstanding him. So I think there's still more to that story that's to be told. But with a week from WrestleMania, I'm not sure it's going to play into this very much. It feels like something for afterwards.
They certainly haven't done much to like maybe make us remember it other than this particular moment. So maybe this is the setup for some sort of big reveal after WrestleMania. Possibly even Mania itself. This is an unsanctioned match where like anybody can really kind of jump in and interfere and perhaps make their big return or debut. But they are reviving that mystery here tonight. Royce Keys gets his own video. This was released on social media earlier, and it's fantastic. Do check this one out if you have not yet. But basically a video that sort of explains, well, who Royce Keys is. He grew up in the Bay Area in East Palo Alto, where there was a lot of gang violence, a lot of drugs, and they shot this in front of Keys' childhood home, where he says his grandma told him to love and not to bring any of that violence into the house, other than maybe having some play Royal Rumbles on his on her front lawn. He says wrestling brought him happiness. It's what brings him peace, and it's what motivates him, and he refuses to be defined by where he's from, but where he's going. I thought, an excellent little video that tells you a little bit about his story and whether or not you should be cheering for him in about the span of 2 minutes. What did you think, Neal?
I thought it was brilliant. Yeah, excellent. And this company has the resources to do a lot more of this. Anything that takes these wrestlers outside of the arena or backstage at the arena and puts them into broad daylight and humanizes them a bit, I really like. Now, it can be completely over the top. You could do this with a Danhausen out, in the town, what they're visiting, cursing people or whatever. This was much more grounded than that. But I miss vignettes because they give you a bit of character development, and this just told you who this guy is, what motivates him, and builds a little bit of character. All in must have been about 90 seconds. So it's great. The only thing I question is the timing of this. It feels like, it might have been better to wait to the other side of WrestleMania. I think this is quite easy to forget about at this time of year, but that's a quibble.
It seems like they are setting him up. Well, number one, because they are in the Bay Area for this particular show. I also wonder if he's a leading candidate to win the Andre next week. Mm-hmm. I think if you want to use the Andre for somebody's impactful like moment, it's hard for me to think of a better candidate who's not on the WrestleMania card than a Royce Keys, actually.
Yeah, I think that could be a good thing for him next week. But again, that's a come and go moment. Like, it's so hard. Who won it last year? Mello? And that's
great question.
I'm pulling that out of my ass, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure.
It certainly is going to be forgotten, within a certain amount of time. But for somebody just debuting like a Royce Keys or immediately have like some level of accolade attached to him that suggests he's at least better than like, I don't know, however, like 19 other guys on this roster, I think it could be of value to him, more so than it would be for, I don't know, really Tonga, which I could also see maybe winning that thing. So
it was Carmelo Hayes. I just wanted to check in case anybody was going to correct us later. But how I remember that, I don't even know, because I don't remember who was left in the match. It's just one of those 1 week things. But it gives him a moment, I guess, and they're all about moments, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Totally agree that they don't take advantage of their stellar production staff enough for these sort of things. And it shouldn't just be for debuting wrestlers. But any wrestler on their roster, like there is great video production really like all the time. But I do think like getting out and taking us to a person's childhood home or a place of significance is much different. And I can only imagine they don't do that much of that because of the nature of their travel and the nature of just like, like you have access to these talents maybe for like a day when they're in town, or maybe 2 days if they happen to show up a day earlier, and the production crew that happens to be there, rather than being able to fly directly to like the person's home. I don't know. I'm just kind of suggesting reasons for why they don't do that. When in NXT, they actually do that a whole lot more. Mm-hmm. So anyway, love to see them do something like this. Berto versus Royce Keys is the match that we're getting. The very first, singles match involving Royce Keys in the WWE. Angel, of course, distracts on the floor, allowing Berto to gain the advantage. Keys catches a crossbody and delivers a fallaway slam. Then he delivers a running power slam, and then he hits the spine buster to give himself the victory over Berto. So, of course, a very quick match here with a little bit of selling from Royce Keys here. What did you think?
I thought this was a pretty good debut. I mean, ideally, maybe someone higher on the card than Berto would have taken this loss, but he's a very good worker. So it's, for all the placement of the card on the card of Los Garzas, they are very good wrestlers. So pairing them up, I don't have that many complaints about it.
Yeah,
you could also argue it should have been a bigger squash than it was, but a wee bit of selling is I thought this was about right.
I thought it was perfectly fine. Not really showing us any like sort of new wrinkles in the 4 moves that he was able to do here that felt any different from the Hobbs that we saw in AEW. But it was only really 4 moves. So I do think like he'd be a leading candidate for the Andre Battle Royal next week. So we'll see if that comes true. Pat McAfee finally arrives, and he arrives mocking Nick Aldis's accent as somebody who I'm sure has heard his fair share of mocking, British accents. What did you think about this, Neal?
It was a very bad accent. England has so many accents for such a small place, and what Pat was trying to do was kind of a Cockney London accent, which is not what Nick Aldis speaks with. So, per Mark,
should have done a bit more research into his accents. So, tells Govna to park his car for him. Jelly Roll then confronts him and asks if he told Randy to RKO him. Pat just says he told Randy to RKO and kill everybody, not just Jelly. Pat says this is a lot bigger than he could ever imagine and to stay out of our business. So is this Pat hinting that he is getting direction from a higher power?
It feels that way. Like if it's bigger than Jelly Roll can ever imagine, how high does this go? And if it goes higher than Pat McAfee and Randy Orton, does this go all the way to the White House with Pat McAfee? Who knows?
Interesting. So Jelly confronts So Jelly then, of course, threatens Pat, grabs him by the shirt and pushes him against the wall before Aldis intervenes. And again, I feel like Jelly is actually very good at these scenes. However, this was certainly one of those moments where, after all the criticism of everything that is going on for this WrestleMania build, I realize I'm watching on my professional wrestling show Jelly Roll threatening Pat McAfee in a backstage skit. So I feel like I'm going to have a lot of these moments, in the next few weeks.
This feels like set up for a PLE after WrestleMania based on the reporting that we have. So it's, I agree. It's I agree with you though. Jelly Roll is very convincing. He's a good actor he throws himself into the role for sure. No pun intended.
Yes. Kathy Kelly is with Royce Keys in the back, and Royce is grateful that he could do this in the Bay Area around his people. And this is when Solo Sikoa walks in. He says, "Long time no see." He says, "Good job tonight, and if there's anything you need, I run things around here, and my door's always open." So, suggesting that these two have some sort of history between themselves from the Bay Area. What do you think about them drawing this connection for Royce Keys?
Fair enough, I guess, although it's highly debatable whether Solo Sikoa runs things around SmackDown.
Yeah, I could buy that these two have known each other, for quite some time. I'm sure all wrestlers at some point run into each other. Like I did kind of look through his cage match. Royce Keys did work Knox Pro, so maybe a younger Solo Sikoa in 2014 was just like running around backstage and watching. So maybe it would have been a long time. I look forward to seeing how that history is explained. And I would say like they did a lot for Royce Keys on this episode. They gave him a squash match, a great video, and they have inserted him directly into the world of WWE and SmackDown through Solo Sikoa. Pat McAfee comes out, our big promo segment of the day. He's coming out and he's giving the finger to the entire professional wrestling audience. And he says, of San Jose, what a shithole. calls himself the hero of this whole thing, so he doesn't know why people are booing him. He says CM Punk is a spineless bum. And he asks if we liked it when he called him Pat McAfee, which clarifies, of course, that is indeed the insult that Punk threw at him. It might have also been the first time the word MAGA has been used on WWE TV.
Well, apart from Punk, yeah.
True. Yes, apart from Punk. Yeah.
But Punk's was at least debatable. Some people were saying you're just hearing what you want to hear.
Well, this confirmed it.
Of course.
Yeah. So Pat McAfee, Pat says Punk was saying all he was saying while he was wearing official WWE licensed merchandise. And he says that Punk has 283 things on sale for you. And so Pat McAfee wonders, when that TKO merch check comes through, which account does it go to? To the needy wrestling family who can't afford ticket bucket? Or does it go into the account that says, I'm sorry, Saudi Arabia? Ooh. So he did go there. He calls CM Punk a fraud. He says he's like a politician. He's all talk and no action. Pat says he is a man who has a chance to change things, and therefore, he says Punk is a man who has a chance to change things, but instead he gets into a room and rolls over like the bitch that he is. Pat says he is everything that Punk claims to be, and he says what that sloppy, fat bag of bones Punk talks about with high ticket prices, I couldn't help but agree. And if not for Randy, why would anybody want to spend their money to watch WrestleMania? He decided to help all of us out, and he called Ram Trucks, the sponsor of WrestleMania, and he asked Ram Trucks, why don't you pick up 25% of the bill for anybody that buys a ticket to Saturday night's WrestleMania from now until the end of Raw? And they said no problem. So immediately a graphic pops up, 25% off tickets for Mania Saturday night from now until the end of Monday Night Raw. Pat says, you can thank me, San Jose. And as this graphic is still on the screen advertising a 25% off sale for one night of WrestleMania, this audience boos. Pat then proceeds to call Sunday's WrestleMania ass. And he does not recommend anybody spending any money on that. But Saturday is where you get to see Randy Orton save this business when he wins his 15th championship. And San Jose continues to boo as Pat taunts them for never having won a Stanley Cup. First of all, do you want to talk about your thoughts on the Pat McAfee things first?
Well, the CM Punk stuff, the response to CM Punk's words on Monday, where's this going?
Nowhere, dude.
If we're to
not at WrestleMania, at least.
No, not at Mania, it seems, and not at Backlash if the reporting is correct, because Pat will be teaming with Randy against Cody and Jelly Roll. It seems. So it seems. That's what Dave Meltzer's hearing. We've reported
it's what John's hearing too.
So it just feels a bit pointless. The crowd, there was no kind of audible gasps or, oh my God, he went there with the Saudi Arabia stuff, or Punk being a hypocrite because of the officially licensed shirts that he's got. I continue to just really dislike this and feel like it's illogical. And for him to be the face of the sale, the guy, I'm going to be your hero. I spoke to Ram Trucks and da-da-da-da-da. And then, while the graphic is still up, as you say, he says that Sunday is ass and nobody should spend their money on it. I can't imagine that's a scripted line. It won't make the Raw recap package, I'm pretty sure, for this. I don't know. It's still a bit of a mess. And we'll get to Cody's response, which I have a different opinion about.
Yeah.
But the Pat character here is just... I mean, I'd only be channeling Cody if I talked about what Pat McAfee was in WWE in all the years that we've known this guy. The yeeter, the cheerleader, all of that.
Well, wait till you hear Cody's other side here, because Cody has plenty to say in retaliation to Pat McAfee. So out comes Cody Rhodes. He says, Pat, I don't think you belong here. He says you can grab one of these titles from Fanatics. You can even do a little fan entrance. And then you can go back and tell whoever sent you here, thank you, Daddy. So again, directing a message to Pat's puppet master. Cody talks about the term play wrestler and not knowing what it meant until last week when he was gasping for air while listening to Pat's promo. Cody brings up Pat's lines about the Attitude Era and tells him, hey, bud, that was 30 years ago. Again, directly addressing audience criticisms through Cody Rhodes. He also clarifies that Randy Orton debuted in 2002, and he watched the Attitude Era in high school. He was never active during the Attitude Era. Again, directly addressing audience criticisms of the writing of the promo last week. So Cody then brings up Paul Bosch. Pat uses buzzwords like IWC and marks, but Paul Bosch would never call the audience marks. He would call them customers. And then Cody says, wrestlers like him who grew up in this business, they're not even just customers, they're family. Cody says Pat has a gift, and for the first time ever, the entire fandom agrees that they want to see Randy Orton and they don't want to see Pat McAfee. So Cody starts to lead a chant of "Go home, Pat." And this is when Pat responds by saying, I am home, you dipshits. I was born to be in this business. You were born into this business with a silver spoon. You're Gorilla's golden boy. And all I see is the fakest dude on earth. He calls Cody a cosplay champion that only wears suits because Flair said it was the right thing to do. Pat says if Orton doesn't win at Mania, he will never see or hear from him in professional wrestling again. So that, of course, adds some stakes to the match. The fans do chant "Go home, Pat." And this is when Cody suggests that Pat only wears shades because he's too high. Too high to remember that he was eating his brains out for the past 3 years, suggesting that he really doesn't hate this business. And he calls on Gunther to come out to put him to sleep. Which maybe just calls back to his match with Gunther. McAfee calls Cody Stardust. He calls him a politicking bum sucking Triple H's ass. This is when Randy Orton appears on screen, having laid out Jelly Roll from behind the curtain. As he drags Jelly out, he starts orchestrating a sneak attack on the Cody. Randy and Cody brawl. Jelly then gets up and threatens to chokeslam Pat before Orton saves him. Pat then attacks Cody from behind, and the segment ends with Orton hitting a draping DDT before laying him out with the belt as Pat and Orton stand tall to end the segment once again. What a follow-up week 2 here. So, oh my God, I'm out of breath.
I will say this, I thought it was better than last week, but that is the lowest bar imaginable. I
don't think you can compare the two, Neal, because they're one of the same story. They're not really sort of like, like two different things you can compare on the same level. One directly builds onto the other, and one is directly trying to fix the other, if you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. Where I'm coming from when I say that is largely from the Cody side of things, where everything Cody said, like you pointed out in the recap, was pretty much what people were saying about the criticisms that people were leveling at the ill logic of Pat McAfee here.
Yep.
Pat, when he was on commentary, was the guy who gave Michael Cole his enthusiasm and his smile back. He was the guy who got up on the table and yeeted and got himself out of breath every week. He clearly loved everything about WWE. And he was very rarely involved in angles. There was, of course, the Gunther thing, which Cody referenced here, but that was always to do with his role as commentator. So the heel turn itself is so weird, and the logic of this character is so missing that the attempt to rescue it from Pat's point of view just continued not to make any sense. Like, he's the guy fronting up a 25% off ticket sale. He's the guy running down CM Punk, bringing up Saudi Arabia and all these things. On the Cody side of things, Cody's the one sort of bringing us all back down to earth and saying the reality. Hang on a minute.
Yeah.
The Attitude Era was 20-something years. He says 30, but, whatever. Split the difference. A long time ago. Certainly pre-Randy Orton. Everything you said last week didn't really make sense. So Cody at least looks better, I guess, from that point of view.
I mean, yes, okay, sure. But I don't think they're fooling anybody, Neal. Like, you can't have bad writing only to have another character come out next week to talk about how bad the writing was. It doesn't wash away your initial bad writing. You're responsible for everything. So this is really weird, where like they recognize that they did wrong. They are taking audience critiques and now folding it into their lead character's dialogue in addressing how bad the show was last week. But I think it just kind of makes everybody look bad. The worst part of it is, Neal, what is the feud anymore here? What are we talking about in the lead up to Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania? They have gotten so far off track. You know, this is now no longer a feud between Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes. This is a feud between Cody Rhodes and TKO. Ari Emanuel trying to insert Pat McAfee into the storyline. And now this match is no longer for Randy Orton's 15th championship. It's not even for Cody Rhodes, like trying to find some sort of killer instinct. It's about Cody Rhodes trying to rid WWE of Pat McAfee and thereby TKO's influence in their storylines. And that is so stupid. That is so ridiculous. On top of that, you're building the side feud between Pat McAfee and CM Punk, which I don't think is anything more than just a bit of a dick measuring contest to fuel egos here and maybe to just like gain some social media buzz. Of course they could do the match, but that's not the plan for Backlash. Certainly is not the plan for the pay-per-view that they're trying to build to in 2 weeks. And the thing about that too is, yes, there are a lot of like maybe what you would consider to be like good lines, you know, maybe like he talked about Saudi Arabia, pointed out Punk's sort of like inauthenticity, but like they're captivating in the moment. But what harm are they doing to your show long term? I mean, this was part of the criticism of the entire CM Punk's John Cena feud and John Cena's criticisms of CM Punk in that buildup. Punk is definitely going to retaliate, but by the end of all of this, he'll have been insulted and addressed as somebody who is a hypocrite again, somebody who has like gladly accepted Saudi money, has apologized to Saudi Arabia for previous comments, and continues to sell and make a whole lot of money through merchandising for WWE. So by the end, Punk will look bad. Pat will look bad, and I think Cody will look bad in all of this. So I don't see how they can get out of this without just completely abandoning ship. But even that will make them look bad. And as I'm saying this, I just think they're continuing to dig themselves into a bit of a deeper hole in it all.
I'm afraid so. I mean, I'm looking for the bright sparks. I'm looking for a counterpoint to what you're saying, and I can't get it. The only thing I can grasp at is that this certainly cements Cody as the babyface, whereas the original feud, without all of this bullshit, without Pat, without the worked shoot stuff, looked kind of like the crowd were going to be 50-50 because they love Randy, listening to the voices in his head and being the Viper. And they weren't maybe they're getting a little bit tired of Cody as, you know, the kind of baby face, you know. So it at least cements Cody's place, and
it does cement him as the babyface here. But that's not because the audience likes Cody more. It's because they like Randy a whole lot less than they did prior to all of this. So, you know, if Randy was up here and Cody was down here when all this started, Cody's still here, but Randy just happens to be down here now. He's not even a focal figure in this anymore. The feud is Pat McAfee and Cody Rhodes.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we got last week. That's what we got this week. Pat as the avatar for
the feud really is Cody Rhodes
Orton.
and Ari Emanuel. It's not even Pat McAfee.
Which again, I simply don't believe that a lot of the mainstream fans know who Ari Emanuel is. They've heard of TKO. They know that the company got took over. They might have a passing interest in things like that. But yeah, the work shoot stuff, I just hate it. It does have so much overtones of late stage WCW, mid 2010s TNA, and like you said, Randy is taken down several notches here. He looked like an afterthought in his own program on this show.
Totally.
Also, just to say, what Pat failed completely to do with the follow-up was make any sort of sense of how they're saving the business through all of this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're going to save the fucking business. Him and Randy Orton. From what? From whom? What?
Yeah.
In what way? You know, all of that. There's so much that makes no sense.
Yeah. I will say I thought like Pat's delivery was, I think, stronger than last week, and maybe that's just because I've gotten over like the shock of the stench of that initial turn. But I feel like there's a decent, you know, heel character in him if the on ramp towards it was a lot better handled. There's good like heel energy there, but it just that all of this has just been so poorly like thought out and so poorly executed that it's really hard to give this any sort of like redeeming value.
Yeah. I don't think it's rescuable at this point.
Yeah.
You know, what are they going to do next week?
I can't wait to see. So in the pack, they're now doing a thing where Pat has taken Cody's title away from him, so he's holding the title hostage. So add that to the list of overwriting in this particular storyline. Pat, as he drives out in his Ram truck, says, "Hey IWC and wrestling fans, marks if you will, you're welcome." So, oh my god,
Yeah.
oh man, I feel like we need like a 30-second break. Miz and Kit Wilson are in the back with Nick Aldis. They want something done about what the ref did in their tag match last night. Aldis says there's nothing he can do since the ref was cursed. Wilson wants something done, and Aldis offers to put him in the ring with Danhausen tonight. So Danhausen getting his debut match tonight, along with not just Royce Keys, but Danhausen. Two AEW stars getting their debut matches on this show. Jacob Fatu versus Tama Tonga is our match next. Tama hits Jacob with something like that looked like the pedigree for a 2 count. I don't know if he was going for that intentionally or not, but he hit the pedigree. He got a 2 count. They announced the Andre Battle Royal next week on SmackDown here. Tama then delivers the Tongan twist for 2. The cutthroat is stopped by a super kick, and then Jacob delivers the prettiest moonsault ever for the victory here. What do you think about the match?
I mean, it was solid enough, but I mean, it was a bit of a nothing match with absolutely no build, so completely cold. Not much to say about this. It was a match.
So afterwards, Jacob is about to grab the mic to address his home crowd, but he's attacked by Drew McIntyre with his wrist already taped up for the unsanctioned match. He puts handcuffs on Jacob Fatu and beats on him, chaining him to the ring post. And I don't know if he got these handcuffs from Alcatraz or, from the gift shop perhaps at Alcatraz, because these were about the worst handcuffs in existence. The weight of Jacob Fatu seemingly just pulls these handcuffs off of him and they break. So Drew has to chain him back up in order to complete the visual that I'm sure Paul Levesque directed him, to accomplish earlier. So the beatdown continues.
Fucking up. No, I can't do it.
It's funnier with your accent to hear it. So the beatdown continues, and again these handcuffs break. Drew just then at that point just says fuck it, and it continues whipping Jacob with his leather belt in the ring. So I mean, decent enough angle, but the cuffs did kind of ruin it, unfortunately.
An unfortunate breakage of these ridiculous handcuffs with the longest chain imaginable. I actually thought this was maybe a bit much, ahead of the match. I think the rivalry is well set, so I don't know that this was necessary, but but of course I saw it coming because I knew that this wasn't going to be just a match with Tama Tonga and Jacob winning and then.
Tonight was not at all an angle that I think added really any sort of heat to it. Like they're kind of, cycling through very similar material. We're just seeing like intense beatdowns, jail, you're a convict, yada yada yada. Like we had a big fall off of a billboard. That was kind of cool, but afterwards they haven't really escalated too much. So we'll see what they do next week. R-Truth is in the back, and his role at this point in the company is to remind us and to tell us how to buy this pay-per-view on ESPN or PLE, whatever you want to call it. He's teaching Danhausen how to accomplish this. And at this point, they do a whole thing with Priest, where Truth thinks Priest was the one who mistook Danhausen as Asuka. It was absolutely not good. And I regret even having to type out notes for all of this. Meanwhile, we see Rhea Ripley beating down B-Fab. So she is en route to taking out the rest of the Jade's baddies here.
Yeah. Not much to say. Deeply unfunny stuff with R-Truth.
At least it was Danhausen, not the entire tag team division, right? Who aren't mentioned at all on the show, other than Berto. Sami Zayn comes out. He gets booed, and he acknowledges that he hears what's going on, and he reminds us that it was Cody and Randy who told him to change, and it seems like this audience wants him to change too. But he's fighting against what I guess he is suggesting, is an audience demanding a heel turn. Zayn says he's always strived to give him more and more and more, and his real self. He knows that there are people booing him, but he knows there are fans that still have his back, and those are the fans he cares about. He says he will never betray himself because that'll be betraying them, and he loves them. He will never change until he's dead in the ground. But for the ones booing, he says, I don't even know what I did, but I don't care. But my true ride or die fans, and he tries to prompt so he goes on to say, who are my ride or die fans? All that pressure and anxiety is gone, he says. Whether or not you like it, I'm walking into and out of Mania as champ. So this was really interesting from Zayn. I mean, this, again, we said last week, the audience are already at like a 12, in this sort of like course towards a heel turn. But Zayn and Trick are both kind of having to pull things back a lot more so that we can get, I think, what I would assume to be a definitive turn for that moment at WrestleMania. So Zayn here is outright saying, I hear the boos, but I'm not going to turn heel, essentially. What did you think about the promo here?
Yeah, it's definitely worth talking about this before this section, before Trick comes out. I think that he was hoping for the so-called ride or die fans to chip in a little bit more. He didn't get much reaction. And again, I think we talked about this last week. The audience are ahead of the game with this storyline. And in some ways, it's a bit of a pity because Sami has done really, really good work for weeks and weeks and weeks to kind of make this slow turn happen. But that haluva kick last week was just too un-Sami, while his opponent's being checked over by the ref. And I think that set people over the edge. But I'm still enjoying Sami's work here. He's kind of like, what did I do? It's, I'm only doing what I've been advised to do by Cody, you guys, and but the audience are definitely a step or two ahead.
I have to imagine, the template for a double turn is always like Brett and Austin. But I wonder if that is at all achievable these days when, I think the audience maybe can read things so much stronger and will react to something maybe a lot faster than perhaps the slated turn at WrestleMania itself. But I don't think they're upset by this reaction. I mean, as long as this crowd is reacting loudly, and they're reacting very loudly for the both of them, especially for Trick Williams when his music hits, it's at this point a total babyface sort of applause button just to hear Trick Williams' music here. Trick says he knows Sami doesn't like him because he didn't have to work 20 years to get here. And Zayn says that people are merely infatuated by Trick. But at the end of the day, he's in the ring with a WrestleMania main eventer, and Trick has not shown him anything yet. And this is sort of I guess, closed by Yachty, who continues to maybe throw a bit of a heel line in there towards Sami. So the match itself is Trick Williams versus Matt Cardona with Sami Zayn at ringside. Yachty blatantly cheats, and gets involved on the outside. Cardona delivers the broski boot, followed by the unprettier. The Trick slap gets a 2 count. Trick on the floor shoves Sami, who's sitting ringside. Yachty, as Sami gets on the apron, trips Sami, and then Sami haluva kicks Yachty. Because Yachty is out, Trick almost loses the match due to the distraction, but he does recover, and he hits the Trick shot, and he gets the victory before he goes and checks on little Yachty on the outside. This is where I felt like I thought we certainly had maybe a bit more Yachty than I was hoping for. And anyway, what did you think about all this?
I didn't love it because, again, and I'm just going to harp on about this as I do every week since it happened, Matt Cardona is supposed to have a broken wrist. that was further mangled the following week, over and over and over again by Randy, and he was further injured last week. And so I just felt this match, Cardona, for the position that he is in the card, got way too much. And in fact, there was a wee bit of kind of bad selling from Trick Williams during the match, I thought, as well, which didn't look wonderful, you know. So from the match point of view, I thought it was unnecessary, and the sort of thing that I imagine would have been cut in a 2-hour version of this show, which is its ideal format. Yeah. And on the Yachty stuff, yeah, a little bit too much of him here. Very strategic camera angle for the haluva kick, because that's not something you want an amateur to try and have to take realistically. So I imagine it was several inches away from the head. But
yeah, what they're trying to do with this double turn is I think very, I mean, it's well, no pun intended, tricky, because they're having to strictly portray Trick Williams right now as at best a tweener. But he is pretty much a babyface in his reactions here. You know, like, we were supposed to feel he shows sympathy for his friend Yachty getting attacked. He's the one holding Yachty back from an argument with Matt Cardona. He's effectively a babyface now. But Yachty, in the couple weeks that we've known him, I think is having to show a lot more heelish tendencies. But we also don't really care about Yachty. So he just kind of feels like he's just a device that's kind of shoved in here to play the heelish side of Trick, while Trick is trying to carry on this sort of like babyface type of role. And this part I don't really like. I don't think it's necessarily landing. I think what Zayn's doing on his own, trying to stay a babyface in spite of like the heel reaction, I think is effective, is fine. But to me, tonight is where there was a bit of disassociation with what they're trying to achieve through Yachty with Trick and what's actually being accomplished. Like, I'm happy he got attacked. He's a heel. Him getting haluva kicked, I think I should feel good about that. So Trick feeling sympathy for him is not necessarily something I care that much for.
Yeah, I think they had Yachty sort of pegged as this sort of beloved figure, and therefore taking the haluva kick sort of heals Sami a bit. But I think that's the intended.
But Yachty was tripping Cardona on the outside.
He was, yeah, and throwing him into the
So how's that a beloved like figure's action?
Yeah, I don't know. Which confuses the whole.
This part is a little messy, I have to say.
Yeah.
But they are fighting like, you know, big babyface crowd reactions here. Danhausen versus Kit Wilson in Danhausen's first match on officially in WWE. He hits a Northern Light suplex early before Wilson dominates. Kit Wilson then goes up top at one point, but Danhausen then does the Taker sit-up, and he curses Kit Wilson, prompting fireworks to explode from the ring post behind him. This crotches Wilson on the top turnbuckle, and then Danhausen follows up with a big boot for the victory here. Afterwards, Miz is about to attack, but the lights go out and Danhausen evades. What did you think about Danhausen's first official match here?
I'm not sure I love Danhausen in the ring, but he's competent. He's a competent wrestler. And honestly, on tonight's show, I thought this was a good usage of Danhausen, and the fact that he, you know, we've established these goofy powers he has in a kind of in-universe sense seems to work. So him firing the curse, which seems to set off a what Wade I think described as an inadvertent pyro going off, is not so crazy like an Undertaker kind of entrance. You could put it down to a mishap or something. Whatever. This is all a very long way of saying I pretty much enjoyed this compared to an awful lot of what else was going on in this show. So in-ring Danhausen isn't my favorite version of him, but I thought this was good for what it was.
You're not
a bit of fun.
No, I mean, you're arguably not supposed to buy a ticket to see his matches. You're there to see the character and to see him sort of like curse his way into victories. And I felt tonight was a creative way of like being able to play with the curse as an idea to in the body of a match itself. And I think Kit Wilson and The Miz are actually really perfect, oppositions for Danhausen. So to me, this was a short, inoffensive segment here.
Yeah,
in fact,
I agree with that. And I think that pairing Danhausen with these two is what has worked best for him so far. He's popping up on both shows, and some of it hits, some of it misses. But I like the stuff with The Miz and Kit.
I can honestly see like WrestleMania presence in some sort of backstage thing, or even front of stage thing. Certainly for Danhausen, and maybe for Kit Wilson and The Miz as well. Cena and Danhausen, I think, will probably be some interaction that I could certainly expect in the back.
Yeah, and the WrestleMania crowd will give Danhausen a big ovation, I think.
Yeah. So Jade is in the back. She's now taking out Michin. Rhea Ripley has taken out Michin, and Jade finds Michin in the back. Next week on SmackDown, we got the Andre Battle Royal. We've got the MFTs versus the Wyatts in an 8-man tag. And then we have an exclusive. Raw and SmackDown superstars will appear live for the very first time on the very same show, Neal.
Can you imagine these Raw contracted superstars turning up on SmackDown? This is wonderful. What's the main event? What was the main event tonight?
Dude, the goal in like trying to advertise this as some sort of selling point, like watch next week, we're gonna have Raw and SmackDown wrestlers on the show, is it's silly, but maybe it'll be different in that like the whole show will be Raw and SmackDown crossover rather than perhaps just a select few. I guess the Andre Battle Royal will have everybody anyway. So it'll be a go-home show for the entire roster next week on SmackDown. Rhea and Io. Io tells Rhea to stay in the back ahead of the match. Rhea says, leave something for me at WrestleMania. So in our main event, we got Jade Cargill taking on Io Sky here. I don't know if these two have wrestled before. Do you know?
I'm not aware. To be honest, it felt like they hadn't. That was my impression by the end of the match.
So I was curious at least to see what this looked like. Jade controlled a lot of the match, attacking Io on the floor. Of course, Io has injured ribs and also an injured arm from the kendo stick attack. We come back from break. Jade military presses Io, who's able to escape with a sleeper hold. Jade hits the blue thunder bomb, getting a 2 count. Io on the outside delivers the Asai moonsault to the floor, and while on the floor, Jade slams Io's chest into the steps. Jade stays in control as she delivers Jaded, pinning Io Sky in the main event here. Afterwards, Rhea is out to protect Io, and Jade simply leaves. So, no announcement about Io and Asuka. No really sort of like discussion about Asuka at all on the show. What did you think? What did you think about the match and the closing sort of result of this angle?
Whether or not it's because I was a little tired by the end of SmackDown, which is often the case after 3 hours of this show, I was, and pun intended, a bit jaded by the end of this show. I didn't much care for this match. It felt clumsy to me. I was watching it. I had caught up with the live stream, so I was able to see the in commercial portion of the match, which was really clumsy, including some very bad selling from Jade and a move that left them both laying. That commentary had no idea how to sort of interpret what had happened. So the match itself wasn't very good. Jade's selling wasn't very good, and it left me hoping very much that Rhea and Jade have been rehearsing hard for their big match next week, because Jade's wrestling still is not that great. For all the charisma and look and everything else, she's really not still up to scratch. So there's that. As for the angle part of it, well, not much there either.
There wasn't much angle here. Like I was expecting a little bit more. Like there was a part of me that felt like they were either maybe committing to just having the Kabuki Warriors in that tag match, and therefore Io not having a role here. Would they have just laid Io out with a bigger attack here to really heat up this particular match? They didn't do that. It was Jade beating Io, which is a significant win, of course, but it's also to be expected. She's a champion going into a title defense. Yeah. They didn't really achieve a whole lot, in my opinion, here. And I agree with you. Like, if you are using this as a judge of perhaps where Jade might be, because she is facing arguably the best wrestler on this roster,
Yep.
certainly on the women, but you could maybe even argue with the men as well. I felt like they kind of met in the middle, where this was not as good of an Io Sky match, but maybe I would consider an above average Jade Cargill match. But it's I WrestleMania has to be better than this. Like the rematch definitely has to be better than this.
Yeah.
So those are our thoughts on tonight's edition of SmackDown. I also noticed a small cut on Jade's brow on the close up towards the end here. So we'll see if that's anything or if it was just something minor. Your thoughts overall on the show?
Not particularly good. 2 weeks, well, not even 2 weeks, 8 days rather, with one episode to go before WrestleMania. I thought they did not. I didn't expect them to, but they did not rescue the Cody Randy match, which doesn't even feel, like you said very eloquently earlier on, Way doesn't even feel like it's a Cody Randy program anymore. It feels like it's Cody and Pat and somehow CM Punk. So all of that was still a mess. There was no particularly good match to point to, even really. So yeah, disappointing episode of SmackDown.
There's a lot of Royce Keys. I thought was a positive on the show.
Yeah.
And again, I look towards him as maybe being a front runner for Andre next week. But yeah, like, it's hard to talk about the show without just really thinking about the whole Pat McAfee thing, which continues to be just a giant mess of just the greatest magnitude this close to a night one WrestleMania main event. So it does get people talking, and like on some level you wonder if that's what they're actually happy with, whether or not people are engaging with it, whether or not social media metrics are up for Cody versus Randy as a result of Pat McAfee,
or the IWC, and
in the
activated.
end, Neal, as a result of all of this discussion, do you think more people will be watching this match with interest?
No. I had to think about that, but no, I don't think so. They will hope so. They probably think so. I think it's somewhat of a turn off. I think in some of the messaging threads and groups I belong to, people weren't particularly interested, even out of curiosity, to see Pat McAfee tonight. And honestly, if they did, I'm not sure this will have primed them for even more next week.
Yeah.
And into Backlash as well.
I feel like there's because it's so topical that I think there will be curiosity in the way that like somebody might want to see a Jake Paul fight, and not to see great boxing, not to see certainly like quality, really anything, but to see, like the happening, to see what other people are talking about. I feel like this might have resulted in some of that. But it is a real shame that they, I think, had a chance at telling a really strong story based in a lot of their own lore between Randy and Cody Rhodes. And that to me feels like it's completely fumbled now and not possible. So we wait to see if there's a reveal of a higher power. Do you have a prediction right now of who actually wins the match?
Well, at the moment, my money would be on Randy Orton to win, because Pat has said he will never. No, it'd be a heelish thing to just go back on his word, but he said he will disappear completely if Randy doesn't win. But all the reporting is that Pat will be involved at this match at Backlash, so it sort of shows a hand if the Pat character is being truthful.
Mm-hmm. Yep, certainly it does. I mean, I would have chosen Randy to probably win anyway, just because prior to this, I felt the Randy character was quite hot as a heel, but especially after this, and I agree with you, with Jelly Roll attached to it all, I certainly see Pat McAfee sticking around, and therefore Orton winning. All right, so those are our thoughts on WrestleMania 2 weeks out. This edition of SmackDown. It's the go home edition tomorrow, and it is also next week, and it is also WrestleMania week, where we will be back with bonus coverage all throughout the week, but we will still be here for all of our other shows. So next week might be a bit of a special one, actually. I actually don't know how we'll be doing Rewind-A-SmackDown, because we might actually be covering or Bloodsport at the same time. So we will watch SmackDown. We will talk about SmackDown, but it might be at least in full or partially in the Post Wrestling Cafe. So this is all just to say, join us in the Post Wrestling Cafe. As little as $4 if you are a new member. Otherwise, sign on, come back. It is really going to be worth it this month, especially. So postwrestlingcafe.com for all of that. Neal, let's head on to the cafe for the XL edition to hear your feedback to tonight's edition of SmackDown.